The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. And I'm your host, Bob Roth, and it must be Friday, and indeed it is. We're coming at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park Money Radio Studios, 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web, moneyradio1510.com. If this is the first time you're tuning in, our show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. And how do they do that? They do that by listening to this show. And it's not about me. It's about the great guests I bring. And today's no different. But before I introduce our guest, I want to give a big shout out to my youngest daughter. Jessica Roth is celebrating her 25th birthday today. So, Jessie, Dad is sending you birthday greetings from over here in Arizona, and our listeners are too. I'm very proud of you. For those who don't know, she is in the healthcare profession. She is a nurse over at Cedars-Sinai Hospital, working in labor and delivery, and she's not working today, but she'll be working, I think, over the weekend. So she took off today for her birthday. So happy birthday, Jess. So going back to really talking about our show is about our guests, and I am really pleased to have in the studio with me as an old friend. He's my former trainer, literally from 25 years ago, 24 years ago, however long it was. But he is now in the senior space. So without further ado, Steve Heller.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Man, this is like circle of life, full circle.
It is.
Sit with you. Wow.
And you know what? I was hoping you wouldn't make me do planks and sit-ups and throw the ball.
You never know.
Yeah.
We have 4 breaks.
And I got to tell you, he was the king of planks, man. I really learned how to do planks when I was working out with you.
Yeah, we had a good time.
And treadmill running.
We did a lot of treadmill running. And I gotta work with your whole family. So
you did.
This is just so cool to be back with you.
It is. And I've been watching you over the years, and I really want you to take our listeners through really your background and your history, because you're at this incredible CCRC community. And for our listeners, that's a continuing care retirement community over on the west side called Glencroft Center for Modern Aging.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful property. It's been around a long time, but when I saw you landed there a few years ago, I was like, what the heck?
I know. I literally never thought I'd be in senior living. I never even crossed my mind that the industry would call and I would go running, but it happened. And it happened through a journey from hospital to hospitality to finally that senior living space. And it's been a journey since I graduated Grand Canyon University way back in 98. And I got out and I went right into St. Joe's Hospital and working in physical therapy and sports medicine and working with a lot of the local sports teams and pro teams and high schoolers and kids, and really cut my teeth on working with that demographic that was not necessarily needing physical therapy, but might have just coming out of PT. And they needed that handoff and transition into wellness, working on an injury or working on chronic pain or whatnot. And it gravitated towards me working with a lot of gymnasts in the gymnastics space here in town. Desert Devils Gymnastics.
That's where I worked out with you.
That's right. And so we started coming out of St. Joe's, we had a group called Sports Tech, and we worked with a lot of high schoolers in the Valley. And I loved working with the younger group. I didn't have kids at the time, and I was a kid at the time, and I was like,
yeah, you were.
Yeah, I was like, I really love working with somebody that's healthy. I went to school for physical therapy, but this smartly, Grand Canyon University, the first thing they did when you're ready to go to PT school was say, we need to put you in an internship to see if this is really right for you. So they threw me into Health South, and I went to a burn unit. And I said, I don't know if I love this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if this is my wheelhouse.
How smart was that for them to do
I
that?
look back, and I'm like, man, how blessed that they put me in that position. So I know before jumping all through this rabbit hole
Right.
of continuing education that wasn't for me. And then I said, I didn't love that. What else you got? And they said, let's throw you over to St. Joe's in the sports medicine. And this summer they have an internship program, and there's like 100 candidates. They have 2 spots. And luckily enough, I landed it, and I was like, this is it. Working with kids, this is it. And I got out of that internship. They offered me a full-time job, and I just jumped in, and kind of the rest was history there. But looking back at those times, man, there's so many friendships that I made and people that come full circle like you 20 years later. You're like, man, it's fun to look back at those times. But it really was the foundation for everything I'm doing now. And it really was that kind of learning through various protocols and programs that were in place that we were running, being a franchise, of working on speed and performance and fast twitch muscles, and how, as somebody ages, how do we continually get them stronger? And I didn't think it would end up in senior living and working on fall prevention, but here I am, and it's the coolest thing I've ever done.
It's interesting as I reflect back, it was about 20 years ago. I used to meet you over there at Desert Devils at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And I mean, this passion that our listeners are hearing from you, you had that same passion 20 years ago. I mean, literally, I would be half asleep, and you're like, hey, let's go. Let's do the planks. And I mean, the other thing is, I really learned how to stretch. I always was a stretcher, but
yeah,
I mean, you were really big in stretching, assisted stretching too.
Yep. The stretching is something that we do to this day, and it's the foundation of everything we do for successful aging, in my belief. Whether it's fall prevention, mobility, just anything with posture, everything comes back to your flexibility. So it's so funny because I look at the space I'm in now and working with and we'll get into it, with all the skilled nursing and the memory care and everything we're doing. It's still protocol I ran with the Arizona Cardinals and with all of these pro golfers. And if these guys only knew what I was pulling from in the bucket, I'm drawing this information. They're doing all the stuff I was doing with my PGA Tour guys. But we've condensed it down in a whole different strategy for fall prevention. But they're doing the same base stretching, core development, hips, mobility, and that hip girdle, like all of that foundational functional strength.
Yeah.
It has to be in place for falls. And it's like, I just think it's so funny that, I watch all these 80, 90, 100-year-olds doing our movements, and I'm like, man, that's what I used to do with all those Cardinals guys back in the day.
Yeah, and it's paying off. I mean, you're pulling that stuff, out and doing that stuff, which is really amazing. And before we take a break, and I'll tell you, Steve, they go really fast. So I just want you to know, we only have a couple minutes here in this first segment, but I really want to know, and our listeners want to know, how did you gravitate from working with professional golfers and professional athletes and college kids and high school kids and knuckleheads like me to really getting into the aging space?
Well, it's a long story, so cut me off if we go to break. But it's one of those things that, God's hand was all over this from the start, right? Like I look back now, like anybody can look back at their past career, and they're going, man, I see how the stars aligned, and this thing really played itself into where you're supposed to be. But it was really a network of relationships in the Valley that kind of led me to conversations in the senior space, going on another radio show, talking with Glencroft people about fall prevention and how, there's a hospitalized fall over the age of 65 every 12 seconds in this country. I mean, I was astounded by that, right? Like I knew falls were a big deal, and what I was doing in golf coming out of the recession 09 was leading more towards a little bit older demographic, North Scottsdale guy, losing distance on his drive. He wants to hit the ball further. He would come see me at Kierland, right? Mm-hmm. But what I was doing with them was really just building strength and building functional movement.
Right.
And it would so happen and say, I fell he fell. Like, I didn't know. What do you mean he fell? Yeah, I just kind of fell over. And I thought, well, let's build some core strength for that. And Glencroft reached out and said, hey, I hear kind of what you're doing in the golf world, and I heard you talk about falls, because I was on a different ESPN podcast, and we were talking about it. And they were like, would you be interested in just having a conversation about, we have 40 acres over here. If you had keys to the kingdom and had 900 bodies to work with, would that interest you? And I go, no. I love working with pro athletes like
Right.
that. This is my jam right here. Like
Right.
I don't want to leave. I have 300 people I see, and they just kept calling. And so finally, I kind of picked up the phone and we said, let's explore what that means because I don't even know what a Glencroft is.
Right. Right.
Right.
And you explored that, and
Here we are.
yeah, that's crazy. It really is crazy that's how you got into it. And the principles that you use with professional athletes and amateur athletes is exactly the
It's
same.
exactly the same.
And-
Exactly the same. And so, my first time over there, being on a campus, we have 40 acres, which I didn't even know where this existed over in Glendale. We're right by the stadium, and it's been there 50 years, and it's kind of dated. But you look, it's like going to a house, right? You see the bones, and you're like,
Right.
what could be with all of this 50-year-old campus? You've got buildings you would never make it the same. We have basements, and we have multi-big use facilities.
Right.
And the only thing I saw is, man, we've got opportunity here to be, because we're the biggest CCRC in Arizona
Yes, you
at
are.
900 bodies. We could really be the North Star of senior living for this kind of, one shop, stop shop, where somebody, depending on that CCRC model, comes in independent living, they transition to needing assisted, they get into a little bit more of the licensed areas, but their holistic wellness pattern follows them, and they don't lose that as they transition.
And I would imagine that because they have this programming,
Yeah.
that has been a lure to a lot of residents that have moved in.
A big lure.
I would imagine
yeah,
so.
I'd love to talk about that because we are on a waiting list. It's awesome.
Well, I'll tell you what, you hear a little music. I told
do.
you time
I
does
do.
fly.
It does fly.
And we have great music, too, thanks to James.
There you go.
He always keys them up, tees them up. The metaphor for golf.
yeah, right? Yeah,
Steve
James, clean it up.
Heller, man, great to see you. We're going to have 3 more segments, so I'm looking forward to learning a lot
As
more.
am I.
You've been listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. I got Steve Heller here. He's the VP and Director of Operations for Zoe Life over there at Glencroft Center for Modern Aging. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, we're in our second segment here, and I've got Steve Heller here, an old friend of mine, former physical trainer for me. Used to kick my butt at 5 o'clock in the morning over there at
Dark
Desert
and early.
Devils.
Dark and early.
And the passion that he had then, here 20 years later, is just the same. I mean, he's really passionate about the work he's doing. He's the VP and Director of Operations over at VP, Director of Operations of Zoe Life, which is located over there at Glencroft Center for Modern Aging there in Glendale.
Yes.
And I just was blown away that you got into the senior space.
Yep.
And for our listeners, if they missed that first segment, go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button, third button down is radio show. You'll catch that first segment and many more. So you've got this thing called Zoe Life, and I'm looking at this golf shirt you got on,
Yeah.
and it says Parkinson's Immersion Program, and I know you're working with fall prevention.
Yep.
We learned about that in the first half. PIP, powered by Zoe Life. Tell
Yeah.
me, what is a Zoe Life, and what is this all about?
Absolutely. So we started like anything. You kind of just got to start, right? So I got over to Glencroft and we said, okay, we got 900 bodies. I know what I want to do with them with balls, but I've got to figure out the right way to do this. And luckily, leadership at the time said, and it's really the only reason I went over there, is we're not going to charge for this. Whatever you create is added value for living here. So.
Wow.
And it was literally the only reason I left Kierland was if they were going to say, hey, we want you to help these seniors work on falls, but we're going to nickel and dime them and we're going to sell sessions and packages.
And they were going to leave that to you, too.
Yeah,
You would
and
have
I
to
was going to
sell
say,
it.
no chance.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm not doing it. Now, if you want to make this a added value piece and this is going to be part of your culture living here at Glencroft, I'm all in. So you decide that. And they were like, done. That's just going to be who we are. It's in our DNA. We want this. And so what we started with was a mission for fall prevention. What we wanted was a lifestyle enhancement piece. With an aging demographic, with people that are bored, people that are depressed, anxiety-ridden. This is long before COVID, right? This is in 18. It was a concept and a model that I always considered it cultural fall prevention. Falls was the crux, but it had to be holistic in nature and very like hospitality oriented.
Right.
So we started in 2019 on January 2nd, and it didn't have a name. It didn't have anything other than I need bodies to try to do what I want to do with them, and I needed guinea pigs. And so, we started with 43 residents in the independent living area of campus, and I called it Beta 1, which everybody kind of liked being in a beta program once I explained what it was. And we started, and what was very cool is we were very data-driven. So, anybody that came in, we did analytics and data baseline on every bit of their movement, their cognition, everything, so we could have a really good foundation of who we were working with, and we could gauge progress. And so we started with Beta 1, and I was about 2 weeks in, and I had another 50 on the waiting list. And I said, okay, we're on to something now. Because as I knew it, older people, they like to talk, good or bad, right? Like they like to, and they sit around our community and they just chit-chat. And I knew what we were going to do was be positive. So I knew the response would be good, other than I'm sore. I knew that was coming. It was that momentum that we got early where all of a sudden I had a Beta 2, Beta 3, Beta 4, and I was playing with 200 of our 400 IL residents within 2 months. And 200, so 200, and it was like overwhelming because it was just me.
And by the way, it is hospitality, right?
It is 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. And senior living is hospitality. It's baby boomers are coming. Everybody's trying to get their head around this, but I thought, how cool is it to work with these, silent generation of 80 and 90-year-olds gearing up for baby boomers, right, with protocol and what we're trying to do. But love on these guys is who I really want to work with right now. And that's what started. So I had 200 people and didn't have a name for our program other than this is really good, and the data is proving itself out. Like all of our data points from senior living fitness tests, kind of like that are, very across the board so we can compare national averages to our people. To our own branding of testing, I said, this is very cool. What it needs to create, though, is a pillar model, like these 6 pillars of wellness that are out there in the world, that we can lean on besides this physical pillar, because it's more to that. This is one piece of the puzzle with these people, right? Like the workouts, the way that they're eating, that's one little piece, but it's the cognitive state, it's the emotional state, it's them continuing to learn. Like that's where I had never worked in this before and got excited because I knew the physical space like the back of my hand. Like I could do that in my sleep.
Right.
But trying to create programming to get a senior's mind to turn on and engage them, that's where I kind of got a little bit of like giddiness because I hadn't been able to create like that in years.
Right.
And so what came to me was we're a faith-based campus. Glencroft has always prided itself on a very Christian 50-year-old campus founded by Mennonites way back in the day. And the spiritual pillar had to play number one. That's the number one lead foundation to everything we're doing. So when that played in it, our number one pillar, everything just worked itself out from there. We took an emotional pillar, then we took the physical pillar, and then we did social pillar, intellectual pillar, finally vocational pillar. So all 6, now I'm sitting on a real plan, needed an umbrella kind of name to it. And so we came up with Zoe-Life, and Zoe is a biblical term meaning abundant life.
Wow.
And so John 10:10 talks about living this abundant life and chasing vitality. And I'm like, man, that's everything that I'm trying to create. So Zoe, in the Bible is Zoe, but we go Zoe, is really life, but it means abundant life or chasing vitality. And so we say you're pursuing vitality through a full, active, and abundant life.
Oh, I love it.
And
I got chills. I really do.
It's awesome, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
so I give my wife a lot of credit because her and her father-in-law and we're sitting down and we're like, come up with a name, and we're scratching on a napkin, and all of a sudden it just resonated. And it's like, this is Zoe-Life, and it's powered by Zoe-Life. Like it's gasoline for this fuel that's Glencroft. And at the time we were still Glencroft Senior Living.
Right.
And so we made a decision as an organization, like we're going to lose senior living now that we have Zolife, and we're going to be the Center for Modern Aging.
I love it. I got chills.
And then it's not just a marketing thing, right? Like that's my big thing is I don't want to go somewhere and just be a marketing guy, like a sales guy. That's not my jam. I want to really be doing what we're doing. And to call yourself a Center for Modern Aging but not to be able to back it up was not what I was about. And so having Zolife and now these 6 pillars and be able to collaborate with Midwestern University running point on my emotional pillar. So their complete psychology department is all in with me in Zolife. So they send us students, they collaborate with us. It's like, so it's not just me trying to play psychologist guy.
Right.
Like I work with Midwestern. They got that. My chaplain, my pastor run my spiritual pillar. We have a doctor that's on our board that runs on our intellectual pillar. So we have like leadership involved at every pillar that can drive curriculum. They can drive programming, but it's all under this umbrella of Zolife.
I love that.
I know.
It's so cool. I mean, because, you know, it is the, how should I put it? It's the hub, right?
Yeah.
And those are the spokes that you're talking
exactly.
about. And you have somebody that is leading in those spokes.
That's right.
It's not about Steve Heller.
No.
And it really isn't about Glenn Croft,
No.
Center for Modern Aging. It's about having the resources. And the students from Midwest University have to be really cool.
They are blown away. And I will say quickly that the Midwestern University students have been a joy to work with in a sense that, like any student, I was a student, right? You get in front of an older person or anybody outside of a textbook, it's like deer in the headlights. You're just kind of like, whoa. And so to put them in a space where they're having to stare at a senior and actually involve and engage, they're like, this is unbelievable.
You have no idea how much I just learned about Zolife. Now I understand why you went over there.
Yeah.
It's halftime here at Health Futures. I got Steve Heller here in the studio. He's with Glenn Croft Center for Modern Aging. Stick around. We got 2 more segments. We'll be right back.
9110 to learn more. That's CRE.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. And if this is the first time you've tuned in, our show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. And how they do that listening to this show right here on Money Radio 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web, moneyradio1510.com. If you're just tuning in, I've got Steve Heller, an old friend of mine. Mm-hmm. He was my personal trainer back over 20 years ago, and he is now the VP and Director of Operations for Zolife, which is part of Glenn Croft Center for Modern Aging. Mm-hmm. And gosh, if you missed that first half, go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button. 3rd button down is radio show. You missed a lot, and you will hear that by pushing on that button and listening to the show from May 20th, my daughter Jessica's birthday. Steve, you've talked a lot about Zolife, and you know the thing I love about you is the passion is just oozing out of you.
Yeah,
this is like, you know, it is really fueling everything you do.
It is. It's. I think I'm lucky because I found what I really was wired to do early, and I found what I was able to do helping people coming out of college, and I found like that's really my skill set is in hopefully inspiring and getting people amped up to work on themselves, or in this case with Zolife, it's big picture industry changing things that I really want to do. I think that I wouldn't say senior living is broken by any stretch of the imagination. There's some amazing facilities out there. But I think in large aspects of it, it is warehousing seniors to a certain degree where, you know, we want to keep them safe. We want to keep them fed. We don't want them to fall. So we want them in a wheelchair, where Zolife's the opposite. It's like, we want to be safe about things, but we want to be, you know, we want purpose and we want direction in someone's life, and we want them pursuing vitality. And even if that's, you know, it's obviously different in the space they're in, if they're in, you know, memory care, or independent living, but everybody has this little red thread running through them that we can just pull on to see what fires them up. And in Zolife, because I've got 6 pillars to play, not everybody wants to work out, right? Like
Right.
not everybody. I could put gold bars down in the bottom of that gym, and I might not get some of these residents down there, right? But they might want to learn a lecture, and so we started Glencroft University, and so we have 43 lectures a semester,
Wow.
all from Midwestern, Grand Canyon, ASU, lawyers, doctors, everybody in town that's wanting to buy into this concept of continuing education for seniors. We come speak in person, and Glencroft is a very blue collar campus. We are filled with farmers, Midwest. It's a very unique setting in a sense that a lot of our residents never even graduated high school.
Wow.
They were on the farm, and they were farmers, and they retired, and they ended up at Glencroft. And I talked to them. I said, where'd you go to school? Well, I went to high school, but I only got through X number of years. And I said, wow, so what would you have done if you weren't a farmer? Well, I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to. And so we try to build programming around some of those mindsets of, okay, well, you were a farmer, but you want to do this. Let's bring in people to speak to that.
Wow.
And that might interest you more than working out. But all of a sudden, I got you cognitively thinking, and guess what? Your falls are being reduced because you're aware now. Your mind's turned on instead of just sitting in your room.
Right.
And so what's cool about ZoLife with all 6 pillars and the final being vocational, we can target pretty much anybody over there. If they want to work on the Bible, we've got the spiritual pillar, and we've got resources. If like I said, they want to engage in that university concept, and we just had our first graduating class last year, and it's a 3-year process. It's not like a 1 semester and you graduate. It is accruing a lot of credits in each pillar, and then doing like 100 hours vocational area, just volunteering opportunities. So we had like 16 graduates.
And to think about how they shared that with their own families, right?
I can tell you.
And the graduation day must have been amazing.
My vision, and I always tell this story because I'm a storyteller, but I would always say, graduation day is going to be amazing. These families are going to fly in, and people would just roll their eyes like, here he goes again. And guess what happened? They all came. Families piled in. Fox 10 showed up live with the cameras.
I love it.
It was everything I hoped it would be, and tears were flowing because they were walking across the stage getting a diploma from a fake university, signed by me with my silly graduation outfit on, but it meant everything, right? It's like that provided that box to check off. And for them to walk across stage and have their family out there cheering them on, it was everything.
It gave them ZoLife, man.
It gave them ZoLife.
Abundance of life.
That's right.
I mean,
That's what
seriously.
it's all about.
I think the challenge we run into, Steve, is a society, especially as Americans, we have always treated the elderly as, it's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem for the adult children. What do we do? Oh, we can institutionalize them. So we used to put them in nursing homes.
Yep.
And then go and visit them around the holidays or not visit them at all. And you know what? That's not the way it should be.
No, it's not.
And I love what you're doing there. I mean, you're re-engaging them. You're giving them life.
The whole idea of ZoLife, it was not like I invented this wheel. It was literally looking at what people were doing with that Blue Zones model, right? So these Blue Zones models around the world of how these centurions, what commonality did they all have? And it was all there. It's a script, right? Get in your Bible, keep moving, eat good, socialize, never stop moving. I mean, it's just not rocket science.
Motion is a lotion, man.
Yes. And
It
so,
is.
the idea of ZoLife is just doing kind of that Blue Zones. And our old CO would say, if they could do it in Loma Linda, California, well, we should be able to do it in Glendale with 40 acres, right? So we should have that same juice behind us to create our own version of what that looks like. Now, it's going to look a little different to us because being a faith-based campus and the kind of the Christian walk, but it's going to have that same commonality where, we have an amazing activities department. We always have. But how do we leverage that into ZoLife? And how do we leverage dining services to do a Mediterranean diet that is really not just taste good, but have purpose within their physical pillar of what they're working on with Parkinson's and how they're taking their medicine and doing all of that collectively in their backyard where they don't have to travel. And during COVID, that's where we saw so much good come out of ZoLife is going into COVID through all the university and all of the applications. They were just putting tools in their tool chest to get rid, not knowing COVID was even coming. Right. But then here came COVID, and it's like, okay, I know how to isolate. I have all these resources to lean on to get through that. And then coming out of that, dining services preventing or starting this like very holistic Mediterranean diet that they could follow. And so we're not just preaching one thing and then doing it completely different on the operational end. It just has that full circle mentality that carries its weight from IL to AL to skill to memory. And it's special, man. I get excited and you hear the passion because it's like it's everything that I hoped I could be doing at this point in my life. I didn't know it'd be with seniors. I always thought it'd be with golfers. But to be able to have a platform like ZoLife to do it, I mean, you touched on it with our Parkinson's Immersion Golf Program. Golf's still in my DNA, and I know how to do it really well with working with others. And I thought, Parkinson's is such a unique situation in a sense that it afflicts men more than women. Senior living needs more men than women to come in. We're proportionately different. So we'd like to get more men to come. So if we could create a programming piece on campus that was driving protocol and programming for Parkinson's in your backyard, where you don't have to drive and travel and go to this doctor, go to this speech therapist, go to this guy for the all one-stop shop, and then have the wigwam play nice and have an outlet to be able to play golf. All of a sudden the stars aligned and we have shuttles going left and right over there. And it's just fun to think outside the box and then have it come to fruition so fast.
Absolutely. And those Parkinson patients are trapped in these bodies and they want more. They want to be able to do more. Before we break on our third break here, falls annually, the reporting of falls for people, 65 and older, 1/3 have a fall. It's incredible. And then 2/3 of those 1/3 will fall again in that 1 year. So, I mean, falls are the leading cause of death from injury of people 65 and older. And I mean, we have to figure out how to prevent those.
You have to figure it out. You have to figure it out.
And all the things you're talking about, mind, body, spirit, all of that is so important. But really, it's engaging the core and strengthening the core. I'll bet you have some older adults there that are doing planks that are probably hanging with you, buddy.
I would show you pictures that you'd be 95-year-olds doing things you're like, oh my God.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Hey, by the way, we got Coldplay taking us out. I saw them in concert.
You did?
Last week. Oh my gosh.
Amazing, huh?
Amazing. Third time.
Woo.
I highly recommend going to see Coldplay. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. I've got Steve Heller here in the studio. He's the VP and Director of Operations for ZoLife. He's over at Glencroft Center for Modern Aging. We're talking about how he has taken that passion that he had as a personal trainer and helping professional athletes and really working with older adults, which is really amazing. Stick around. We'll be right back.
How would you... Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. We're here in our fourth segment. I got Steve Heller here in the studio with me. He's an old friend, former personal trainer of mine. He's the VP and Director of Operations for ZoLife. They're over at Glencroft Center for Modern Aging. And I got to tell you, it's been really great getting reconnected with you. And you're doing some amazing things with older adults. It's really cool.
I appreciate it. We're having fun. I mean, for anybody that thinks that somebody that old isn't fun anymore, or they're kind of just boring and they're just kind of set in their ways, not true, man. If you give them a platform to succeed and you give them a little bit of inspiration and you're there. I mean, we couldn't just have a gym downstairs and expect these people to go down and start working on their falls, right? I won't want to say any names, but there's other competitors in the Valley that have built amazing facilities and big elaborate gyms, and they'll call up and say, hey, come over and see what we got, and I'll do a walk in, and it's like dust on everything. There's
Right.
nobody there, but there's no program. There's no like viable driving home programs to make these guys want to come out of their apartment and again work on their bodies. And it's a fun experience. It's different than the pro athlete. People say, can't believe you left pro athletics to train seniors. And I said, these guys are just trying to catch a few more footballs. These guys are trying to get out of their wheelchair and
Right.
walk again. And so to watch and be a part of that process of getting somebody to walk again for the first time in 5-10 years or get off a walker. There's so many walkers on these campuses, and they're crutches, they're Band-Aids because nobody wants to fall. But we can get to the grassroots of getting, like you said, their core strong and their hips strong and get some mobility back in them. And, we're doing some amazing things with technology with eSTEM and working with pain management. And that's we go for another hour just on what we're doing with pain management for neuropathy, for chronic pain, for migraines. And it's when you start playing tech and you start playing with nutrition and spirituality and you see it all come together in this model, it blows me away every single day what our people are capable of.
It's interesting, the analytics part.
Yeah.
You talked about that in the first segment, and certainly there's so much we've learned that data tells
Yep.
us everything. And if you're measuring, and you
Yep.
certainly, I know you well enough because I knew you when you were a personal trainer, that you are a vet. You go through an evaluation of one of your residents at first, so you know where they're at.
Yeah.
You have to know where they're
You
at,
have to.
and then you map out a roadmap, a plan to
Yeah.
get them to where they need to be, and then they see progress.
That's it. That's
And,
it.
and when they reach these milestones, it's got to be just so invigorating for them.
It's invigorating for staff and family and resident. And families are some of our biggest hurdles because they don't want mom to fall.
Right.
So when mom calls and says, guess what I did today? I was on a trampoline and then I get the call. Why do you have my mom on a trampoline? Well, let me explain. She's not really on a trampoline. She's working on her ankle stability, so on these falls. And it's always a fun conversation. And we bring in Facebook portals and ways so that they can see them in real time, be able to experience. So they're like, oh, I get it now. Okay, she's not really on a trampoline. I thought grandma was jumping backflips on a trampoline. And I said, I wish, but not today. But data is a huge deal for us because I can't tell you how many times we've had, pre-red flags come out on our data where they're getting better and better and better. And then all of a sudden fall back and we're going, whoa, we've got a red flag here, and we can reach out to family and they can call the right medical people and get them brought up to speed. And we're on the head of something before anybody would have known, but we had the data points to back it up.
Love it. And you talked about professional athletes, and I know you worked with kids and high school kids and college kids. And, I know that this isn't a perfect metaphor or analogy. My daughter, who is a speech pathologist, Allie, over in California, worked with kids when she was going to school. And she kind of, lost a little interest because they didn't really want to go through the speech therapy exercises.
Yeah.
But then when she worked with older adults in these rehab hospitals, these were people that could talk before, and they had a stroke or had some kind of accident, and how hard they were trying, and they wanted to just succeed. You probably see that every day.
I see it. Not our sister program to Parkinson's is our stroke program. We call it SIP, so it's our stroke immersion program. And a big piece of that is our Midwestern grouping with our speech programs. And you nailed it right on the head there that, working with a demographic that's lost their ability to talk, swallow, do so many of those things, they're chomping at the bit to get better because it's a lifestyle thing. When people can't hear them, it's frustrating, it's aggravating. So you put them in with resources to help with that and make it fun, right? With music, with tongue twisters, with breathing exercises, with drums. It's invigorating to us as staff to watch them get better and then hear the families call like, I could finally hear my mom call on Christmas and do Zoom with us.
Oh, wow.
Right? Like, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. You know what? I got to have you back, man.
Oh.
I'll tell you what, I need to cut you just a little short,
Yeah,
but
no worries.
but I want to put a plug out there.
Yeah.
So if anybody listening right now wants to learn more about Glencroft Center for Modern Aging, go to glencroft.com.
Yep.
If you want to learn more about Zoe Life, go to call 623-847-3120.
Yeah, that's my direct number. They get me.
You got
Yep.
You got it. Well, I got a new guest here in the studio, and I'm doing a big intro.
All right, hey, I'm right here. I'm listening.
He's starting a new show, which is really
I
cool.
hear it. I'm excited.
So Your Health is Wealth. That is the name of the show, and Dr. Stephen Katz is here. Fridays at 1 o'clock, a naturopathic physicians group. We're located on Raintree and Scottsdale Road. Naturopathicgroup.com is the name, or is the web address, right?
Correct.
Well, it's really good to have you, and you got the
you for
show
having
that
me.
you're just kicking off right after this one.
Right after this one. Yep.
So you want to give a little tease to our listeners so they can stay on so they can listen to you.
Sure. Well, each week we're going to be coming on here every single Friday at 1 o'clock.
Yep.
And we're going to basically start teaching people how to live a healthy life. So each week we're going to have different topics we're going to be talking about, and we're going to, give them alternative ideas from conventional medicine.
Wow. It's kind of like what Zoe Life is doing with Steve Heller over there at Glencroft for Modern Aging. That's really, really cool. I mean, let's face it. I mean, health is your wealth, and without your health, you have nothing. And I've learned that as I am an aging adult. And this year I'm celebrating 60 years old, which I cannot believe. Can you believe that?
You don't look it, man.
When we end, we're going to go into the conference and we're going to do a plank contest. Okay, so we'll see. We'll see how it can go longer.
I'm on the shelf right now. You'd win.
I know.
Yeah, we chose that title mainly because, without having health, doesn't matter what your wealth is. So it's like having good quality health allows you to do the things you want to do. Spend time with your grandkids, live, go golfing, do all the things you want to do.
Live a full life.
So
you want to give a tease about your show? Who do you have on today?
Well, actually, we're going to be having every week, we're going to be co-hosted with my other doctor in the office, Dr. Lorena Ryder.
Okay.
So she's going to be joining us today as well.
Fantastic.
And we're going to go through today. We're actually going to be talking about digestive health.
Digestive health. There you go.
There you go.
You need to stick around and listen to that,
I'm
Steve.
right there, yeah.
There you go. Well, you're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. It's so good to have Steve Heller here in the studio, get reacquainted.
Absolutely.
And for our listeners, stick around. Your Health is Wealth with Dr. Stephen Katz and Dr. Lorena Ryder. They're up next.
Awesome. Thank you.
You make it a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next Friday.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress Home Care Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit cypresshomecare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 FM.